Ukrainian troops are claiming some major victories this weekend as they fight to take back territory occupied for months by Russian forces. It is a fast-moving counteroffensive by the Ukrainian military that analysts say shows that the tide of the war is shifting. CNN's Melissa Bell is in Ukraine. Melissa, give us an update.
Pam, more than 2,000 square kilometers of territory recaptured by Ukrainian forces since the 1st of September. That's what President Zelensky has announced tonight in his nightly address. Really remarkable advances, not just being made down in the southern parts of the country where a counteroffensive kicked off on August 29th, but much more spectacularly in eastern Ukraine, where a second counteroffensive began just 5 days ago. What we've seen over the course of the last few days, specifically since Thursday, is Ukrainian forces sweep eastwards with remarkable speed, taking village after village, with images appearing on social media. This is, after all, a counteroffensive that is the subject of a media blackout. So it is the pictures being posted by the soldiers themselves that are showing the world people being liberated in those villages, Ukrainian flags being put on rooftops. And what we're hearing from the advance, or beginning to piece together, is a picture not just of troops moving first eastwards and then southwards, taking only this Saturday the cities of Kupiansk and Izium, an extremely important military hub for what had been the Russian occupying forces there in the Kharkiv region. What we're hearing from that very fast advance is a remarkable story of very little resistance opposite. Stories emerging of some village having been taken without a struggle at all, some Russian soldiers simply leaving their equipment and uniforms, putting on civilian clothes and heading to the border. We're beginning to hear reports also by the Russian border as people try to flee across the border, of some lines of traffic forming there, but really quite extraordinary pictures of those advancing Ukrainian forces, again in the face of remarkably little resistance. Now what happens is that in those parts that have been secured, Ukrainian authorities are going to go back, make sure they can take control, clean up the towns, and the fear is what they're going to find that the Russian forces may have left behind, Pam.
Yeah, an understandable fear there. Melissa Bell in Ukraine, thank you for that. Well, yesterday, Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky spoke with CNN's Fareed Zakaria about the military advances Ukraine has made in recent days.
Mr. President, let me ask you about the battle right now. It does appear that Ukraine is moving forward in Kherson, in other parts of the east. Is this the beginning of a campaign to roll back the Russian invasion of February 24th?
You know that our goal is to deoccupy our whole territory. The main goal is deoccupation. We just cannot allow Russia to continue the same occupation that they started back in 2014. They are eating you piecemeal, bit by bit, like a Russian cannibalism, I would call it this way. And I don't want to play this game. I don't like this. We will not be standing still. We will be slowly, gradually moving forward.
Joining us now is CNN military analyst and retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton. All right, so help us put this all into context. This war has been going on for over 6 months. We've been hearing about Ukraine taking back its land. Bottom line, is this a major turning point for Ukraine?
Pamela, I think it is a major turning point for Ukraine, and the reason for that is it's all about the momentum on the battlefield. And when you look at some of the intangibles about warfare, you know, we talk about the number of missiles that a country has, the number of airplanes, the number of tanks, all those things matter. But what really matters, once you have those pieces in place, is the way in which you move forward, the way in which you've got yourself organized, the way in which you command your troops. And the fact that what the Ukrainians are doing is moving so quickly tells me that they have a lot of really esprit de corps, what we would in the military call esprit de corps. In other words, the morale that is necessary in order to move forward. And the reason they've got this is they're defending their homeland. The Russians are there because they don't know, and they don't know why they're there. And the reason that's so important is if you don't know what you're fighting for, you're not going to be a good fighter. But if you do understand what you're fighting for, if you know that you're protecting your homeland, you know you're protecting your family, you know you're protecting yourself and your comrades, you're going to do that in an even much more impressive way than you would if you didn't have those things to fight for.
Yeah, and not to mention the Russians are you know, more than 6 months into fighting for something that many of them don't believe in, don't know what their mission is exactly or why they're doing it. And so it leads me to the question of how much is this progress for Ukraine about the momentum it has and its capabilities militarily versus just Russia not having the will to fight and not having the organizational structure and the you know what it needs.
Well, you know, I think it's interesting. It's really a combination of both because on the Ukrainian side, you have a really streamlined command structure that is really different from what the Russian structure is. They give their lowest echelon authority to do things. The Russians don't do this. The Russians are still wedded to Soviet doctrine in essence, which means only the top gets to decide what is going on and how to move forward. If you don't get the orders from the top, you don't do anything. And that's very demoralizing for the troops in the trenches. And the fact also that they don't really know, Pamela, that you know that they're fighting for you know a certain ideal or something you know that is greater than themselves. That makes a real difference in this particular case. So when the Ukrainians move forward, they're doing it, yes, based on Western aid. They're doing it because they have you know certain strategic objectives in mind. But what's really important is that they can get those strategic objectives. They can take those strategic objectives in a way that allows them to not only take the first one, but then the second one and the ones after that. So it becomes really a cascading effect, and that is very, very important for their momentum. So this, for that reason, could very well be a turning point in this war.
How much of a challenge, though, do the Ukrainians have ahead of them in terms of keeping the land that they have been able to retake? I mean, the Russians, as you know, said that, hey, we'll be back. This is just temporary.
Yes.
What do you make of that?
So the Russians are obviously sending a warning, and from on high, you know, from the highest echelons of the Russian military, of course they want to keep the territory that they've taken, and they want to take more. They have not abandoned the goals of, you know, carving out a large portion of Ukraine, in fact, even decapitating the entire country. But that becomes really unrealistic given the Ukrainian resistance that we're seeing. So the Ukrainians have got to be very careful, though. Yes, they've got momentum on their side, but the Russians are not sleeping exactly. They are fighting back in certain ways, but they don't have some of the material that they need in order to do that. The sanctions are apparently taking effect in certain areas that impact military readiness. The Russians are getting ammunition from North Korea, for example. That's a very different thing. They're getting drones from Iran. So they don't have the supply lines that they really need in order to win the war. The Ukrainians don't on their own have the supply lines they need to take the war into Russia, but what the Ukrainians can do is they can take the war to their former borders, and that's, I think, what their goal is. That's how they, I think, will get to the peace table in this particular case.
I just think about when the beginning of this war happened, 6 months and 2 weeks ago, you know, we were at that magic wall and we all thought that Kyiv was going to fall in 2 days, and now here we are. I mean, I don't think any of us could have predicted where we would be in this war at this point.
Not at all, Pamela. And that's what's so different about this, because nobody thought, even the Ukrainians themselves, many of them did not even think that they would be able to resist the Russians to this extent. Right. So on the one hand, it's Ukrainian morale. On the other hand, it's a failure of the Russian system to actually work. And in essence, the Russian military has proven itself to be a Potemkin village.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Colonel Cedric Leighton, thank you so much. Good to see you.